Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Ferndale City Council meeting for Monday, November 26, 2012. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Galloway?
Here.
Lennon?
Here.
Martin?
Here.
Piana? Here. And Mayor Coulter?
Here, yes, thank you. We have a quorum. And Madam Clerk, thank you for filling in for Sherilyn this evening. Nice to see you, Marnie.
Thank you.
The next item of business would be the approval of the agenda. Any discussion, changes to the agenda this evening?
I move to adopt the agenda as presented in its entirety.
Support. Moved by Lennon, supported by Martin. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. The agenda is adopted. Next item of business is presentations. Our first presentation this evening is the Police Department Citizen Award, and I believe Police Chief Collins is here to present that award.
Thank you, Your Honor. In keeping in the strong tradition of recognizing assistance by the citizens of this and other communities in the apprehension of criminals, we have somewhat of an unusual one tonight, which is usually the case. On October 19th of this year, we had a very serious home invasion of an occupied dwelling. This is where someone was, during the daytime, was breaking into a home that actually had a resident that was inside. Unfortunately for the suspect, the individual that was in the home was armed, and he came out and actually fired a shot at the individual from the inside of his home and witnessed the suspect as he fled the neighborhood. The victim of this crime provided a very detailed description of not only the suspect but the vehicle that he was driving, including a symbol that was on the side of the stolen vehicle that was used during this crime. That information was supplied to the media, both the internet media, print media, and the television media, and that was broadcast over the next day or two. On the 21st of October, Mr. Marcel Nestor, who is in the audience here today, he was riding his motorcycle in the city of Redford Township and observed that vehicle that was on the news that he had saw on the internet, and immediately recognized it as the vehicle that was used in our crime. He called 911. He went through a little bit of a routing through the Detroit dispatch over to Redford, and then ultimately to us. We made contact with the Redford Police Department, explained to them the situation. They, Mr. Nestor stayed there, kept an eye on that suspect from a safe distance until the Redford Township Police arrived, and they subsequently arrested the suspect. We then, of course, responded to the scene and also took custody of that individual. Mr. Nestor's excellent memory, his involvement in this particular incident, took an individual off the street, has a criminal history for breaking and entering, receiving and concealing stolen property. He's currently on probation for larceny in a building, operating a chop shop, fleeing a police officer, and receiving and concealing stolen property. He's also a parole he's on parole with the Michigan Department of Corrections, and he's an absconder, so he's a parole absconder as well. And that gentleman has not only confessed to this crime, but we also have been working with two other communities that he's cleared up some breaking and enterings in their towns as well. So if Mr. Nestor would step up, and we'd like to present him with a Citizen Award and our great welcoming and thank you for your assistance. Come on up in here, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Where are you from, Redford?
Yes.
Well, appreciate it very much. Where did you hear about the incident?
I clicked on Detroit.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I knew it looked familiar, I just didn't know
Yeah.
Good work.
Thank you.
Very great work. Thank you so very much. Thanks, Chief. Our next presentation is a recognition of Ferndale's businesses during the Hurricane Sandy relief efforts. And this is a proclamation that Councilman Lennon and I had the idea of putting together because, as usual, Ferndale steps up when there's a need, even if the need is all the way over on the East Coast. And in particular, we want to, a lot of folks did a lot of things, various bars raised money, individuals did things, but 3 businesses in particular really stepped up in a typically Ferndale way, and we didn't want this good work of theirs to go unrecognized. And so we put a little resolution together, which I would like to read now. Mayor Dave Coulter, on behalf of the Ferndale City Council, extends the city's appreciation to Garden Fresh Gourmet, Dino's Lounge, Ferndale Electric, and all others who chose to lead a massive relief effort for victims impacted by Hurricane Sandy. On November 7th, late in the evening, Jack Aronson of Garden Fresh Gourmet called Dean Bach of Dino's Lounge to request his assistance in providing a half truckload of bottled water that was to be shipped the next day to New Jersey for disaster relief. Dean immediately made personal calls and campaigned on social media for requests for emergency supplies, food, water, and other contributions. Within 12 hours, tremendous teamwork, persistence, and coordination enabled Garden Fresh Gourmet to send 5 54-foot trucks carrying 20,000 pounds of food and 1,400 cases of water, as well as clothing, blankets, and pet supply donations. Arthur Ashley, president of Ferndale Electric, led 25 employees and sent 13 vehicles to work in eastern New York and parts of New Jersey to restore electric service to several homes and small businesses. Arthur's crew of employee volunteers worked 16-hour days for 7 days straight. Jack Aronson, Dean Bach, Arthur Ashley, and all of those who helped out in this immense relief effort are a credit to this community, and it is with heartfelt appreciation that we celebrate their capacity for charity and determination to make a difference in the face of disaster. I have a resolution for all 3 of those businesses. They're not here tonight, but I just wanted to publicly recognize 3 outstanding Ferndale businesses for their work. So thank you to all. I probably should have amended the agenda to do this, but instead I'm just going to insert our county commissioner here, because when our county commissioner is here, we like to give him an opportunity to make a presentation about county business. So before we get to the courthouse and police department presentation, Commissioner Covey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief and welcome. Thank you for welcoming me. Good to see the council and the staff as well. Briefly, a quick salute to the voters of Ferndale who turned out in good numbers for the election that we had just a couple of weeks ago. As everyone I'm sure knows, the Oakland County now does have a new county clerk. Lisa Brown will take office January 1st. We also have a new county water resources commissioner. Jim Nash will take office also January 1st. And Ferndale will also have a new county commissioner, as you know. Beginning January 1st, Helene Zach from Huntington Woods will be your county commissioner. You're stuck with me for about 5 more weeks. But we welcome them and all the other folks that were elected. And we really appreciate the hard work that the volunteers did and the staff on the elections. It's a good problem to have too many voters, and we're glad that we had such a huge turnout. A couple other quick announcements. This coming Saturday is the annual celebration. It's the 79th anniversary of the end of Prohibition. This region, of course, played a major role during Prohibition on the other side. But Larry Mills and Monica Mills, for the past 5 years, have organized, along with now a large group of volunteers, to put together this event that raises money for the Ferndale Goodfellows. And so this coming Saturday, December 1st, there are a number of sponsors, the largest of which are United Auto Workers and Ford, but also the Ferndale Community Foundation, a host of other locations. And what folks can do, if they choose, is come out that evening anytime during Saturday night. A lot of folks dress up in period costumes, the 20s, 30s, flappers, gangsters, newsboys, however you would like to dress, or just come out anyway. But there'll be volunteers in all of the clubs that are participating. This year it includes Tony's Sports Bar, the New Way Bar, Valentine Distilling Company, House Bayou, Danny's, Dino's, and Sneakers. And there will be volunteers, again, most dressed up as, period time during the 20s and 30s, and they'll have moonshine jugs, which will be collecting donations. Last year, the committee, we managed to raise $4,300 for Goodfellows. So again, this year we're working with the police and fire. And for folks not familiar, Goodfellows, of course, helps families during the holiday times. And again, the volunteers will be collecting gifts, clothing, food to be distributed to Ferndale families that are in need. Real quick, also coming up very soon after the New Year's, the 12th Annual Ferndale Blues and Music Festival. Just wanted to share with folks that we are currently engaged in seeking out sponsors and venues. We expect during this 9-day annual Blues and Music Festival, and this is the 12th year we've done this, we expect upwards of 20 to 25 venues hosting anywhere from 60 to 70 concerts. We're particularly interested, of course, not only in the clubs and restaurants that always come forward, but we're looking for lots of venues that are in non-alcohol venues, such as the library. We're working with the schools. We hope to have a lot of family-oriented events. That always climaxes on February 2nd this year, which is Groundhog's Day, but it's also the annual barbecue behind Dino's. So we are looking for sponsors as well as volunteers, and I know most of the council and the staff are very helpful for that. Finally, I always think it's important that when we do these big events, the charitable events in downtown, that we always share the proceeds and we share the amounts that we made. So even though it was 6 months ago in the nice warm summertime, we finally can give you the final numbers for Ferndale Pride, which was the four-day celebration in June this year. The festival itself grossed in total nearly $26,000. We had a total of $16,000 in expenses, which left $10,000 plus in proceeds. Those $10,000 were then just distributed this week to the Michigan AIDS Coalition, Affirmations Community Center, the Dyke March, and the Ferndale Community Foundation. So again, just wanted to share that. We are, believe it or not, already working on 2013's Pride Festival. I'll be asking to meet with Michael Larry, other city staff, police chief as well. And in the meantime, I'm working on some proclamations also as my last efforts at the County Commission. So I'll be seeing you all in December, and I appreciate your time.
Very good. Thank you,
Mayor.
Commissioner. Appreciate it. All right. Our next presentation is the 43rd District Court and the Ferndale Police Department Buildings Renovation Project. And City Manager April Lynch, you want to kick that one off?
I have asked both Judge Longo and Chief Tim Collins to present some information as it relates to their buildings. Both of them have some significant capital needs that I'd like to bring to the city's attention, and what we can do is bring them up for a presentation, and then when they have completed, we can talk a little bit more, allow time for questions and a little bit of conversation on process. So with that, I'm just actually going to turn it right over to the presenters, starting with Chief Judge Longo regarding the District Court, and then we'll move into Chief Collins.
Great.
Good evening, members of the council. I'm going to move this just a little bit. My voice tends to boom, and if you amplify it, it shakes the building. I appreciate the opportunity.
It's a good trade in the judge, I suppose.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight. 12 years ago, the council instructed the court to take $20 out of every ticket and put it into a separate account, and the city has kept that fund separate even through all the hard times we've been through, and kept it kind of sacred towards working towards the court building. We are now at a point 12 years later where the numbers are high enough that I think that the council might want to consider doing some improvements to the courthouse. We wanted to walk through just a real quick little history of the 43rd District Court in Ferndale. This building started in the 1930s as a commercial building, It eventually became a retail mattress factory outlet, and as a court building, it's a great mattress factory outlet. In sincerity, in 1971, when they redesigned the building to try and work as a courthouse, they did actually a good job for what the building was and for 1971. Over the years, we've done a little bit of reconfiguring of the space to try and make it a little more accessible and a little more professional. If you can hit that once, you're going to see the upper picture on the left was the library that we used for the magistrate's hearings on traffic tickets. And you can see it's a table with chairs around it, and we often had statements from people that this isn't a court, he isn't a real magistrate, I'm not getting a real trial here, because the space didn't look like that. So we took $3,500 and a really talented carpenter, and if you can see the lower one, we turned the library into a magistrate's hearing room. It still functions as a library, but also functions as a hearing room, and it actually, in my mind, for the money we spent, looks pretty doggone good and would stay that way. We also had this huge problem with files in every hallway. You can see this was about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. That's the door leading into that magistrate's hearing room. And we decided we had to do something to make that a little more professional. And if you look at it now, that's what that hallway looks like. We cleaned it up, we painted, we put 2 benches down for people waiting to get their hearing. The question might arise, well, what did we do? We hid it. We found a back room, and you can see the boxes in the front. We're already outgrowing that space. And hit it one more time. That curtain in the back of the hearing room hides the rest of the files that we hid behind that curtain. So I ask you to pay no attention to the files behind the curtain, but it's not exactly the world of Oz. Have a front. If anyone has noticed the courthouse hasn't looked so good in exterior lately, that's because we had an auto accident. Someone came up over the curb and sliced across the front of the building, taking off the wooden slats. We did get an insurance settlement on that, and we took the slats down, thinking that maybe there we could remove the steel girders as well, until we found out that those steel girders were actually structural and were holding up the overhang on the roof. So the reason it looks so abandoned right now is that we are waiting to see what happens rather than invest money in something that's not going to stay. So that's kind of why we have it looking a little on the tough side. We did have an architect come in and just to take a look at the building to make sure that it was structurally sound, that the roof was going to stand up and the walls were going to stand up. And we found that it was architecturally and structurally sound. It was just obsolete functionally. In trying to do a modern-day courthouse within the confines of what the Supreme Court says we ought to do, we found, as we've all known, numerous ADA violations that we've been trying to accommodate folks on, but we can only do as much as we can. We have an inadequate amount of space for the requirements that we have. If you look at this picture, and it's not quite as easy to see on the big screen, that white thing is a metal detector. People walk in the front door. Oh, thank you. And if you look right there where that sign is, that's the courtroom. It's literally 3 steps from the metal detector to the courtroom, which obviously doesn't function very well in terms of someone wanting to do damage. They're 3 steps away from doing it, and that really doesn't meet anybody's specifications. If you look at the next picture, this is what it looks like on a typical arraignment day. This is our lobby. You can see it's packed, and that line goes all the way back to the metal detector. Those are people waiting to check in to go into the courtroom and wait for their lawyers to have a discussion and things of that sort. We also have no private meeting rooms for attorneys to meet with their clients. That is required by pending legislation that has passed the House and is awaiting the Senate. If we don't do something, I'm not sure exactly how we're going to accommodate that requirement. The Supreme Court standard for clerk space is 1,815 square feet for the caseload that we have in our court, and we currently have 933 square feet to accommodate that load. And the restricted area just makes the workflow exceedingly inefficient, and so we end up handling files multiple times, going back and forth through the same space. I want to make it clear at this point, though, that's obviously what we have. I want to let you know what we are asking for and what we're not asking for. We are not asking for a brand new building. We've looked into that 5 years ago, worked very hard at it, and with the crash of the economy and the real estate market, it was just so far out of our reach we had to walk away from that idea. But what we are asking for is that we renovate the existing courthouse, since we know that the roof and the walls are structurally sound. The architect believes that we can put this building into shape. We'd add some square footage off of the back, that it can be done for a reasonable amount of money and give us a courthouse that will last for 20 years. We're asking that you use part of that 12-year-old building savings account that came out of every ticket. And I do want to make clear that none of this is tax money. It's not any millage money. This was the direction of the council to take $20. We didn't add $20 to a ticket. We took $20 out of every ticket over the last 12 years to build this fund. So that the amount is there. It's enough to build everything that the architect feels that we need to comply with current standards of a courthouse. There won't be any annual payments. No bonds have to be sold. Nothing will go on past once it's done. It's paid for in cash, and none of the citizens' tax money is used. So I'm asking at this point that you consider using that money. It's now at a point where it's enough to do what we want to do and make the building, both exterior and interior, look like a municipal building, something that we can be proud of as part of the complex. And I do want you to know that we don't take this lightly. This is a picture of the carpet in the probation office. We make them go threadbare before we replace it, and that was done last year, but that's how we have been operating over there. So we aren't looking for lots of pomp and circumstance, but we're looking for something that the city can be proud of, and that the citizens that come in to the courthouse can be accommodated with any disabilities that they might have.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Council. I was also asked to make a presentation regarding the police department by the city manager, so I put together some slides as well. I also would like to give you a brief history of what is now called the Patrick T. Sullivan Law Enforcement Building, named after former Chief Pat Sullivan. This complex that we are in today, as well as the police section of the building, was built in 1963 and 1964 as part of the complex. This building has had our portion of the building has had no major renovation since for nearly 50 years. We did have, anything would come close to a major renovation was in the early 1980s. We did go in and remove all of the bars in the cell block and replace those with plexiglass walls as a safety feature and an anti-suicide feature in our cell block. What I have said many times to many different people is that even though that this building, our portion of the building, or the complex itself is 50 years old, or almost going to be 50 years old, our portion of the building is at least 3 times older. What I mean by that is that this building, the City Hall portion of the building, is used Monday through Friday, business hours, no holidays, no weekends, with very few exceptions. On the other hand, ours is where our building is fully staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Like I say, the City Hall is approaching its 50th year, and even though it's the same age as the City Hall complex, we believe that it's at least 3 times older. And the wear and tear on the building, if you do an exterior, not interior or exterior walkthrough on the building, you'll see that it not only shows its age, every year it gets a little bit worse. And this column here kind of sends that message, is that several of them in the back of the building, through salt and through misuse and everything else, it's beginning to deteriorate. But primarily, the things that we want to focus on, any type of improvements to the building, has to do with prisoner security and officer safety. The city manager wanted me to make sure that everybody knew that these are actors, and they look like bad guys, but they're really service aides and police officers and court employees and clerks. If you look at in the bottom photograph here, our building was designed in 1963 to have a sally port. Now, a sally port is a part of the structure that you drive a scout car that has a prisoner in it, and then that sally port is secured, and then the prisoner is brought into the facility through an internal set of what are called man traps, but they're doors that one closes before you can open the next one. That with this building did have, the police department did have a sally port, but as cars got bigger, they didn't accommodate today's Crown size of Crown Victorias. So we have, like any good organization, we have adapted, and we have our prisoners are parked here at this striped area at the rear of the police station, and they go into the security door here. And there's several problems with that, but as you can see here, we have an open door. The officers have to use this lockbox to secure their weapon before they can go to the booking counter. And this would be the booking counter here, where we have one of our service aides acting as a bad guy. The prisoners are processed in the view of the general public, right here. And they're also, at any given time, as one of our civilian employees could walk into that area, as well as any visitors to the police station. So it is not a secure facility, as it should be. One of the other striking problems, which has never anything bad has happened, but the potential is that this is as you come in that back door and you would go in that direction down that hallway to the booking counter, you have to pass an open stairwell that goes down into the basement of the facility. That is not only unsafe for the officer, but also the suspect as well, if they decided to get physical with the officer during that short walk. It is also dangerous because they have to walk the exact same opposite direction to get to the cell block, so they have to pass it at least twice that open stairwell. We also noted that due to fire code restrictions, prisoners are not truly secure in our facility until they are actually locked up in the cell. And there are, although we don't advertise how, but there are ways that prisoners would be able to get into the civilian section of the building. It also is what we try to depict in this photograph, is that if that prisoner was pulling away from that officer, while at the same time we had somebody making entry into that security door, that it's just it would just be an open door and an invitation to an escaped prisoner or whatever bad things your mind could derive from that. Here, there are some non-safety issues in our building as well. You'll notice this is what we like to call the lobby. It's not much to it, but there certainly is no public restrooms, which has always been an issue for us after hours. During the day, we can direct folks to City Hall, but once City Hall is closed, there is no public facilities in our building whatsoever. Also, this other picture here kind of gives a showing of what we have to do in order to maintain IT and other technological improvements throughout the building. The building was built in 1964, as I've said before, and there was no contemplation for running data lines or what data lines would be. So what we have here is a false ceiling that we have all sorts of lines that are running through it. Additionally, we have a general lack of storage space in our facility. For the last 50 years, we have accumulated all sorts of files as well as evidence that we must keep. Some of it we must keep forever, some we must keep for 10, some we must keep for 20 years. That adds up. We also have to store equipment and necessary consumables that was not necessary in 1964. If you see a lot of those piles of boxes, and a lot of that is simply rubber gloves. And that's probably when the supply is at one of its low ebbs. We go through more rubber gloves than you would ever consider, because in today's day and age, that's a necessity that we have to deal with on a daily basis. And we just don't have storage. Another thing is in our cell block area, there is either the HVAC system does not work, or it does not work the way it should. A lot of that has to do with the spaces that we have reconfigured over the years has probably messed up the airflow in the system. This right here is the only heating system that I'm aware of that actually provides some heat in the winter to our cell block area. And we will then set a fan in the hallway just to make sure that we're blowing some warm air into the cell block area, because it gets very cold. That also has, because of the different things that have happened throughout the reconfiguration of the building over the last 50 years, we believe that it has compromised the ventilation system to some extent. We don't get proper ventilation. The building was built with a false ceiling that you see here that actually acts as the cold air return for the building. And that has been changed and replaced and modified over the years. So even the design of the building, whether it was efficient or not in 1963 and 1964, is not efficient in today's standards. We also wanted to show, I was hoping that Mr. Delacourt was here because I made that thing spin and it drives him crazy. This is just one more example of some of the outmoded facilities that we have. And this is our prisoner visitation area. This is the good side. That's the big side. That's where the lawyers sit. And we close that door on them, and they're in basically a closet. And the prisoner is brought in through the cell block area, which is half that size. Any type of improvements to this part of the building also would be much better for not only the community but the folks that we serve on a daily basis.
Whew. Okay. So let's start with any general comments or questions about what we've heard about the condition of the facilities. And then afterwards, let's have a discussion about the fund and how much is there and what it can be used for and all that stuff. But does council have any questions or comments about the presentation and the facilities?
I know these facilities well, and they're inadequate, and they have been for a long time.
I'm familiar with the facilities. I had a tour of them when I first got elected, and I was part of the tail end of the former new building proposal, and I'm very familiar with the inadequacies of both the court building and the police department. So.
Yeah, I would just say that I think that we've kind of kicked this can down the road as far as we can on a lot of these issues, and I think what we're asking for here seems measured and appropriate, and yet addressing the real needs that these buildings have to continue to be functional. So,
Judge, yours in particular, storage is a huge issue for yours. A renovation would still be able to include some additional square footage. How do you envision that?
Can you hear me?
Just well, the people at home need the mic usually. I'm sorry. Yeah. We can hear you, but
the vision is that the addition off the back of the building to the alley would include a brand new clerk's office in that space, which is somewhere about 1,500 square feet. And the second floor of that would be finished space to the exterior walls. And that would be storage space that we would use and grow into as time went on. So we would increase our storage facilities substantially get all of our files out of all of the other rooms that we've hid them in and get them into a proper file room, which leaves space to grow.
And then probably more urgent, that the lobby situation is obviously ridiculous. So clearly you envision a larger area, intake area.
Right. Again, the vision is that the building would go out towards the parking lot about 12 feet, which would allow all the way up to the front of the building and allow a long area for the usual metal detectors, et cetera, and safety equipment. People would come through there, and that would continue down all the way to the back of the new building, which would be lined with seating on each side for people to sit, meet with attorneys, talk with each other, keep their kids out there, et cetera, waiting for their time, all the way towards the clerk's office. And that would increase both the flow of the traffic plus the space enormously.
Judge, handicap accessibility has been an important concern of this city council for many years with our handicap accessibility advisory committee. We've put in elevator here in our recent rehab, accessibility through all the doors, make them handicap accessible. Could you speak a little bit to the challenges of individual in a wheelchair or someone who's differently abled coming to your courtroom, or if they have to use the restroom or any of those issues?
If you come to the courthouse as it currently is configured, there is not a handicap bathroom anywhere in the building. We also found that the bathrooms as they are configured had privacy walls, and that in order to get in and around the privacy wall, a standard size wheelchair couldn't fit. So we had that wall removed, but once we removed that wall, for an example, in the men's room, anyone using the urinal would be exposed to the public when the door opened if someone else came in. So we had to close off the use of the urinals. If someone comes in in a wheelchair and needs to use that facility, and this has happened and we have done this, we go in and and I'm sorry that this is the case, but we pick them up out of the wheelchair and put them on the commode, and then lift them off the commode and put them back in the wheelchair, because we have no other way of accommodating them. And I'm sorry the degradation that might have to the people in that situation, but if they need to use the facility, there's no other way but to do that at that given point in time. So that's one of the first things that would be taken care of in this remod, is to actually make sure we have an ADA-approved handicap facility for the bathrooms, as well as opening up all the doorways, having the counters at the right height, all of those sorts of things that have become impractical. We have a second floor with 2 sets of stairs to it. There's no elevator. So obviously anyone that, it doesn't even have to be in a wheelchair. If you just happen to have bad knees like me, going up and down those steps could actually be dangerous. How do we accommodate people? If the prosecutor has to meet, and the prosecutor comes down and meets them downstairs. I've had people meet in my chambers. We've had hearings that were supposed to take place upstairs. We have the magistrate come down. I'd leave the courtroom. The magistrate would do his work with that person in the courtroom and then go back upstairs. So all of those things would be accommodated in this remod. We would put in a lift, an elevator to get to the second story, and there would be ramps to what needed to be done. We don't anticipate doing much to the courtroom except ADA things like, and I know you've been in there and have questioned this, the witness chair is 8 inches off the floor. Well, again, if you're in a wheelchair, you can't get into the witness chair. The gate to get to the bar is not wide enough for a wheelchair to get through. That will simply be widened so that people can get in. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of cosmetic change to the courtroom itself, but we will have ADA compliance change in the courtroom. And I think that's the biggest advantage this remod has, is to actually comply with those ADA violations and comply with our own rules.
Other questions?
And that took a long time, because I was picking up some of the time that the chief used over and above mine, so I just wanted to...
It's not a competition. All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So If there's no other questions about that, Madam City Clerk, why don't you, Madam City Clerk, Madam City Manager, talk a little bit about this fund that we have and where it's from and how much is in it. And
Backing up just a little bit, it's my understanding, and those who have been here longer can correct me if I'm wrong, but the original thought process behind putting the $20 from each ticket into the fund was for the opportunity to create a new complex, if you will, for police and the court building, with the potential to see that revenue stream for bonding if needed, or mortgage payments or whatnot. And obviously, as the economy started to take a turn for the worse, we realized very quickly that that just is not, it's not fiscally feasible at this time, and not necessarily the right thing to do. Just as many other people in their own homes are staying in and renovating their own homes, they can't afford, to buy a new one. So with that, over the course of the last year, I've been in many conversations with both the judge and the chief of police about taking a look at what the needs really were for those buildings. And you could see here today that it's not just a pretty remodel, or they're true issues that need to be addressed. And so looking at that fund, again, it's been 12 years that fund has been holding that money for this exact purpose. We are, by the end of this fiscal year, in line for $2 million in the fund to do those renovations. And we, both the Chief Collins and the judge, believe that we can do these necessary changes. And not only, I want to clarify, not just a Band-Aid either, not just a quick coat of paint and to just, not make the right accommodations, but a true renovation that does take into consideration the ADA accessibility issues in the court and the safety issues that are very prevalent over in the police department. So again, I feel at the fund at $2 million that we would actually move forward with that budget in mind. And obviously, as we go through this process, if we find that it is going to take more than that, then we'll just continue to put more money in the fund until we find that we have enough money in there. But again, it would just be using that, the money that has been saved. There would not be a need for a mortgage or any bonding to do that. It would be basically writing a check. Yeah. So I don't know if there's more questions as it relates to that, or process, or just in general, we can go from there.
any other, so I guess that is the proposal, to use the building fund. $2 million is what you're saying approximately.
By the end of the
would be in there
fiscal
by
year.
the end of the fiscal year, after 12 years of savings. And those monies have been restricted for this fund. As the judge correctly noted, we didn't rate it for other emergencies because technically we really can't, right? I mean, those have been, I mean, I don't.
We have a public improvement fund that we hold for that particular, for the funds of that nature. And in that, we actually had a designated fund balance for this particular project.
But it's a significant enough project that if we move forward, we need to hire a general contractor. I mean, we're not really new, but it's a significant project that would have a process.
Correct. If council were open to moving this project forward, the next step would actually be to interview and secure an architect to take a harder look and make sure, indeed, that we have the to take a look what the renovations would look like in more of a true cost analysis. So making sure that we're not too far away from that mark and readjusting if we are.
And one question that I probably should, it's not related to the budget part of it, that I should have asked before is, so these are both significant projects. How do you operate while the construction is going on? Just give us an idea of what your thoughts are around that.
Yeah,
I'm guessing you can't work with all that stuff going on.
No, it wouldn't be very practical to try and operate while the construction was going on. Technically, the architect that we did consult said it is possible, but it would probably not be the best way of handling things. And it included in the cursory budget that we put together is money to move out of the court, moving the clerical area to a building down on 9 Mile, and hold our court days in Berkeley. Since their courtroom is not used very often, but they have the same JIS system and recording system that we have, so we wouldn't have to move all of that out of the courtroom, which is expensive to uninstall, install, uninstall, reinstall. We just use their system. We just have to show up with a blank tape, put it in, press the button, and we can hold our hearings. Just really pack in a day. We'll do it a few days a week and move on.
Great, appreciate it. And Chief, what issues do you see in
Your
terms
Honor, ours would be a little bit more complicated because of the nature of what we do.
Yep.
So there are several, actually, any type of contractor or the architect would have some of the solutions for what we could do, whether it was an auxiliary building, temporary building that was put up, or I've actually had offers from other chiefs of police in the area that would have maybe that we could combine forces for a period of time while certain facets of the construction goes on. Whether or not we could be in the building at the same time any of the renovations were going on really is down the road kind of a thing. So we really don't have a hard and fast solution, but we would be the first time we've been involved in this, so we would be doing a lot of listening and to figure out exactly what we would do. But we try to think out of the box and come up with the cheapest, most effective solution.
And that would be, again, as I discussed, as we go further in the process before we can make the moment where we can actually start the building is taking those costs into consideration and, again, ensuring that we have enough money in the fund to do that.
Gotcha. All right.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question? Do we have a sense of a realistic time frame about how long this will take? I know we don't have,
Yeah, I would say from the time the council said go forward, I would say at least a year.
About a year, okay.
I have a question,
Yes.
too, if I may. You talked about architects and having contractors to help redo the remodeling. The city paid some money to do architectural drawings previously, and I was wondering, are there any cost savings there from what we spent money on before?
Well, one of the steps that we hope to take is to look at a few of the architects that were part of the project when it first started, when we thought about the whole complex, since they are very familiar with the buildings, and interview them and hope that that would help offset some of the costs by having somebody who's never even seen the building come in and try that. So can I guarantee that that would be a cost savings? No, but I would assume that with some familiarity, there'd be a little less digging and a little more being able to move forward quicker. So we're hoping we would use those same architects that were already part of the
I will give the public a chance to talk about this because I think we may be moving towards a motion, and so.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Actually, Melanie and April just kind of touched on what I was concerned about, was that we spent over $100,000 4 years ago on this whole ID and assess, and a lot of information was gathered, and I hope that we would utilize a lot of that information moving forward, because $2 million is not a lot of money to invest in those two buildings. The other thing is I would hope that we would look at some of the recent things that we've done to those buildings. For example, 6 years ago, we spent $600,000 or $700,000 on HVAC for all three buildings. I would hope that we would utilize a lot of that equipment so that we wouldn't have that expense as well. So, thank you.
Anyone else from the public that would like to speak to this issue? Good evening, Sherry.
Good evening. Is there any state funding, or I'm trying to remember if the city is responsible for the building and the state pays a little bit for judges but doesn't pay for buildings?
I can answer that.
Please do.
The funding unit is responsible to provide a courthouse for the district court under the statute. The state provides a stipend to the city of $45,800, and the city then turns that over to me in salary. So the city actually isn't paying that part, but they do pay to operate the building, to make one available and to operate.
Gotcha. Thanks. Thanks.
That's what I was afraid of.
That's
it's
right.
okay, they pay you.
All right. Any other questions or comments of council?
Well, I guess I would like to propose a motion then.
Okay.
I would
In
move
order?
that we adopt the following. That City Council recognizes the urgent needs of the Police Department and the 43rd District Court as described by Chief Collins and Judge Longo, and that this council directs staff to continue reviewing the city's needs for the courthouse and the police department renovations and develop a recommendation for further council action relative to rehabilitating those two buildings.
Support.
All right, there's a motion and by Councilman Galloway, supported by Councilman Lennon. Discussion on that. Is that clear enough for you, April?
Yes. It's a long process, so yes, though,
Right.
that
So I guess
authorizes me to
Just
start.
of that is,
Yes.
why don't you formally get started on making recommendations to us?
Absolutely.
Well, I really think that this is a really scaled-down version from what had been proposed in the past, and I think I think that we need to provide a safe and an efficient place for our staff to work, which helps them provide efficient services to customers who use our services. So I think the city council that was in place 12 years ago was doing capital improvement planning and put in place a way to build the money to pay for such a renovation, and we put that renovation off by 3-4 years and significantly downscaled it, or downsized it from its original intent. And so I really think, even just based on the IT technology needs between the police department and the court, I really just think this is the best approach right now, and we have the money, and no tax dollars are going to it. So if we don't do it, I guess we're continuing to increase the fund of $2 million, and we just have this conversation next year, and the pictures will be the same.
Or worse, actually.
Or worse.
Probably.
So, so I guess the question is this the right time to do it? And I feel strongly that it is.
Thank you.
I've already said it, I don't say it again. I think we've kicked this can down the road enough, and this seems, like I said, measured and appropriate. I do have a question, though, that we're not going to change the strategy as we spend down this fund. We're still going to continue to take $20 out of tickets, and so this is really a long-term financing strategy. So 20 years from now, when we've got to do more work, theoretically, this money will be there following the same strategy.
As long as the council directs us to do that. Until they tell us to stop.
More than likely, when we're done with this project, we'll probably be coming, I would imagine we would come back to council for a policy decision on if we want to keep moving that forward or do something different. But yes, we would definitely have that conversation.
Right.
Well, I want to thank you both for the presentation. I guess one of the things that strikes me is, both of those buildings aesthetically are a mess, but clearly the needs are beyond the aesthetics. When we have safety issues and the kinds of issues that you have, it's time to address those. I appreciate the way that you brought it forward, and let's see if we can't figure something out. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Lennon?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Now moving on to item 5, call to audience. Call to audience is 30 minutes now. More time needed at the end of the agenda to talk about anything that's not on the agenda. You get up to 3 minutes. Please state your name and address, or write it on the sheet in the back and let us know who you are. How are you?
Good evening, Mayor and Council and staff. My name is Jim O'Donnell. I'm here in my capacity as President of the Library Board to introduce our new library director.
I was hoping you would do that.
Yes. Jessica Kaiser is a 10-year Ferndale resident. She and her family have been living here for a while. She previously was director of the Hazel Park Memorial Library, our neighbor down 9 Mile Road. So she started last Monday and is here now, and I'll turn the mic over to her to say a few words.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. As he said, my name is Jessica Kaiser. I've lived here almost 10 years with my family, and we've really grown to love Ferndale and consider it to be our hometown. And libraries are my passion, and customer service is my passion, so I'm very excited to be able to serve the Ferndale community here. And so far, it's been great.
Welcome aboard.
We're excited to have you. We heard great things about you from the Hazel Park folks who are sad to see you leave, so that's always good for us.
Thank you. Yeah, we did a lot of really great things in Hazel Park, so I'm looking forward to making a lot of progress in Ferndale as well.
Great, and you're welcome to come here anytime and share the news of the library whenever you like, and welcome aboard.
Great, thank you
Great
so
to
much.
formally meet you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Covey.
Thanks again, Mr. Mayor. I did have one other item. I am a member of the Ferndale Environmental Sustainability Commission. The chair believes that our charter may be expiring at the end of this year, and if the clerk could check that out, we would like to continue our work and get an extension. All right, I appreciate that. And I want to be one of the first to congratulate Ms. Kaiser. We are really lucky to have her. I had the pleasure of working with her in her duties in Hazel Park, and I think Hazel Park's loss is our gain, and so we welcome her very much.
Thank you, and we'll look into the charter for the FESC too. Thanks, Craig.
Good evening, Council. I am here with my Ferndale Community Foundation hat on, and I want to invite everyone to participate in the Historic Holiday Tour. It is a joint fundraiser with the Ferndale Community Foundation and the Ferndale Historical Society. It is Saturday, December 8th. Starts at 3 p.m. It goes from 3 to 7 p.m. The tour takes about 2 hours, so if you came by at 4 or 5, you would still have enough time to go around to the various homes. It is a self-guided tour. There are several homes and businesses on the route. It starts at the Historical Society. We'll have cider and cookies and talk about the history of the society and the history of the building itself. And then you can go around to the various homes and businesses that are on the maps, and there'll be a docent there to explain the history of the home or business. So again, that is Saturday, December 8th, 3 to 7 p.m. For tickets, 248-541. 5888. That is Jeannie Davis's home phone number, by the way. And she'll be looking forward to your calling her and reserving tickets or buying tickets. I have tickets with me tonight. Dan Martin has tickets, and so does Councilwoman Melanie Piana. So thank you again.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. Christina, you weren't on the presentations, but I thought you might have some DDA news for us this evening.
Of course. Well, it's the holidays, so what else? We're talking about the holidays that we have coming up. Well, actually, Craig already talked about our Prohibition Party that will be happening in downtown Ferndale, so I won't give you all the details on that since you already had that. But also that day, I also wanted to give acknowledgement that the Kulik Center will also be holding their holiday showplace. So we're promoting all this stuff with everything that we put out there, because obviously the more that we get the word out about all of our great events, the stronger we all are. So. Of course, our holiday Ice and Winterfest Market, which is our big day, starting on December 7th, that evening. We'll start off with the tree lighting ceremony at 7 p.m. out in the median at Woodward and 9 Mile. So please join us for that evening. That will be the kickoff night for the festivities on the east side of 9 Mile with the Winterfest Market and our large Ferris wheel, which will be on that side. And then on Saturday, December 8th, that will be the day we'll be bringing out all the 50-plus ice sculptures throughout downtown Ferndale. So you'll be able to walk around, check out all the good ice sculptures that have been crafted, as well as look at those that are going to be created on the spot. So there'll be a couple live carvings that day, which we're really excited about, as well as a visit from Santa himself. So Santa will be sitting for photos from 10 until noon and 2 until 4 at Schiffer Park, as well as making a visit with lunch with Santa at Buffalo Wild Wings. We also will have hay rides that will be going on from 11 a.m. until 4 p.m. And there'll be a lot of festivities over in the Winterfest Market area as well. We have a stage this year where we'll have some activities on that stage too. So we're really excited this year. It's masterpieces in ice, so you'll be able to try to discern what art piece might be within the ice that is sculpted. So check it out. There's a lot more information online at downtownferndale.com, and ice sculptures will stay up until they melt away. So, but the festivities last all weekend long for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then on December 20th, we have our Merry Midnight Madness event, which is late night shopping just before the end of the holiday shopping season to get in those last few gifts that you got to get. So come on down to downtown Ferndale. It's always a great place to shop. Thanks.
Thanks, Christine. Appreciate it. Anyone else for call to audience this evening? Good evening, sir.
Hello. My name is Sean Senecal. I live at 936 Vester. I hope this is an appropriate time to express a concern that I have.
Sure.
It seems kind of a bummer coming after all the positive news. I'm here tonight to express my frustration and my concern about the recent election that took place in Ferndale. I have to vote in the 7th precinct, and during the course of the day, I'm going to tell you a few of the things that happened. My wife voted from, she got in line about 12:30, didn't finish till 3 o'clock, at a time that should be, a breeze going through there. And keep in mind, I've never had a complaint with the election process before. It's always been smooth. Poll workers are courteous, no problems there whatsoever. Well, I thought her experience was an aberration, and it wasn't. I got in line at 3:45, and I was there for the next 2 hours and 15 minutes. I timed it on my watch. Incredibly frustrating. While I was in line, a couple of things happened. One, if you're familiar with the Ferndale Activity Center, I had to walk in the door, and I immediately had to go to the right, 2/3 of the way down the long hallway. That's where I started my journey to vote that day. During the course of waiting, the line proceeded to snake around, and by the time I got to the corner over here for it, the line was coming in the door, this side door, snaking around, so I had to cut through the line to go through. There was 3 people deep in line, come back around, go back up to join the line where I had originally started. 2 hours and 15 minutes, again, is how long I had to wait there. During one 30-minute stretch, the line stopped moving altogether. We weren't made aware of what was going on. It simply stopped. I mean, there was rumors, innuendos, things like that. I don't know what happened, but it simply did not move for 30 minutes. Again, timing that. During that period, I actually said something needs to be done. I called the city clerk, talked to someone, not the city clerk herself, excuse me, very courteous and everything, said, oh, we're working on it. Well, it did little. I mean, it started moving eventually. So I know this was a presidential election. I know that a longer line should be expected. People who don't normally vote get in line for these things. But 2 hours and 15 minutes during the course of the time of day that people are working and unable to get in line. I mean, I walked back by there, walking my dogs at 8 o'clock. People were parked all over the lawn there. It was still packed. That is not an effective way to run an election. It is not a safe way to run an election with people 3 deep. Luckily, everybody was actually very well mannered in line, and the poll workers were courteous as always. But what is being done to prevent this situation? When I look at this map, I see the largest, basically the largest geography-wise, and I see it being a catch-all for all these other streets on there. Why? Why am I being forced to wait so much longer than everyone else? And as a matter of fact, my neighbors to the right side of me, both of them did not vote. They have child care concerns. My other neighbor across the street, who happens to be a police officer for the city of Ferndale, couldn't vote as well. He went and tried to go 3 different times, and the line is simply too long. Hour? That's cool. 2 hours and 15 minutes? Not acceptable. So what is being done to prevent this situation from happening again and to allow people to vote in an effective and efficient manner?
Let me address that question. And thanks for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. And we apologize. The city clerk, we actually had a discussion about this at the last council meeting, but the city clerk said it's not acceptable that people waited over 2 hours in line. And it wasn't isolated to just your precinct. It was at many precincts throughout the city. And so it's not clear. There wasn't a single explanation or reason why it happened. It seemed to be fairly widespread and throughout the day, not just at that time of day. And so the city clerk is putting together a task force of concerned residents and people who work at City Hall and poll workers and others to begin to brainstorm what happened and how can we prevent those sort of lines from happening in the future. So I don't yet have a specific cause. There's various things that happened, including at your precinct, a couple of mechanical issues that had to be addressed, which is why I think the line stopped as you described. But there isn't a single reason, and so she is committed, as she said 2 weeks ago, to making that voting experience a lot better than it was in November. And so your feedback is appreciated. I know she'll see this tape. If you haven't given it to her in writing, I know our city manager will share that with you.
Well,
with her as
I
well.
did email the city manager. Right. Did you get my email concerning this?
Did you do it through the web mail?
I did it to A. Lynch at ferndale-michigan.com. I have a copy of it right here.
Yeah, could I, because I don't.
Yeah, if you give it to us again, very much appreciate it. We're working to make sure that experience in the future is improved.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess I'm willing to spend the time here. I'm willing to spend the time for that commission, so.
Then I appreciate that, and we'll pass your name on to her because I think she would be open to that. She's open to having residents on that task force as well. Appreciate it very
Again,
much.
my name's Sean Senical, and thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you for coming out and sharing them.
Yep.
Really appreciate it. Anyone else for call to audience this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are things that council considers routine business, and we enact with one motion unless anything gets pulled. But let me read the consent agenda this evening. Item A would be the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held November 13, 2012. Item B is approval to adopt the year 2013 City Boards and Commissions meetings calendar. D is the approval to sign the agreement with Abraham and Gaffney to assist the city in reviewing the water and sewer fund of the city, not to exceed $9,000. And D, approval of the bills and payroll as submitted by the city manager's office, subject to the review of the council finance committee. What is council's pleasure on the consent agenda this evening?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to remove item C from consent.
Remove item C to the regular agenda. Anything else on the consent agenda?
I would move that we adopt the balance of the consent agenda.
Support.
Moved by Galloway, supported by Piana, to adopt the consent agenda minus item C. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Councilmembers Martin?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The consent agenda is adopted. Now moving on to the regular agenda, our only item is formerly consent agenda item C. Councilman Martin.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to put this in context because this is, I think, part of a number of initiatives that we've had this year as we've tried to address concerns around the water rates. And I think this is a really important step to ensure the integrity of the rate structure for water going forward before we get to the next fiscal year. The goal of this audit is to accurately and fairly represent revenue trends and expenses trends with water and sewer fund and determine whether there appears to be a relationship between the two and project outcomes based on various assumptions that we as the city provide. And it essentially, validates the process that we have in setting those rates in the future, correct? So, we took a look earlier in the year at the hardware and concerns about whether we were getting accurate readings from there. We felt fairly comfortable with that, and there was some work done, as we all know from the antennas and such. And this is kind of a next phase. This is something we should do anyway on a regular basis, but I think adding this adds even more credibility to that process that we can confidently present water rates. So it's important to put it out there, I think, and put it in context because there's a lot of resident concern about their water bill, and this is another step in ensuring that we set appropriate rates.
Well said. Appreciate it. Any other discussion on this item? All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
No, we need a motion.
Oh, that's
I
right.
move that we sign the agreement with Abraham and Gaffney to assist the city of Ferndale in reviewing water and sewer fund of the city and not to exceed $9,000 and to be budgeted in account 592-000818.
Support.
Moved by Martin, supported by Galloway. Wow, any other discussion? All right, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmembers Piana,
Yes.
Galloway,
Yes.
Lennon,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
and Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Moving on now, item 8 is call to council. Chief Collins, anything further from the police department this evening?
Very briefly, Your Honor, is that Sergeant Brown tells me that at any particular time that I have the opportunity is to remind the public to please follow us on Twitter at Ferndale Police. I have no idea how Twitter actually works, but I have been following it, and he has been keeping us up to date on many things, including tips for the holidays, tips for keeping your credit card safe and everything else. So very interesting. He's also doing some updates on crimes and accidents. So if you, and he wants to get that number of people following him up as high as he can. So it's at Ferndale Police, capitalized, Ferndale capitalized police, all one word, and you'll make Sergeant Brown very happy. And also, I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome Lloyd to the new DPW director. So, and I said it first.
But again, it's not a competition.
Yeah. I do want to make a comment, though, on
Yeah.
Sergeant Brown, though. Joe and I were just talking about that this morning, about what a fantastic job that he is doing with the Twitter feed, and how important that is to have that employee empowerment to be able to help us get our information out there and to communicate with the public. So we were just actually talking about that yet this morning. He's doing a fantastic job, and we'll actually be kind of using him as a model as we move forward in delivering that kind of information. So.
Thank you. Fire Chief Sullivan, anything from your neck of the woods today? Nothing. All right, thanks. Jane Marie is back there. Anything from the finance department? No, nothing. All right, thanks. Jill, anything from recreation this evening? Of course.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Just have a couple events coming up. As Christina mentioned, this Saturday is our 21st annual holiday show plays Arts and Crafts Fair at the Kulik Center from 9 to 3. Admission is $1. We are still accepting vendor applications, so if you're interested, that information is on our website, ferndalerecreation.org, or at the Kulik Center. And we're accepting applications through Wednesday afternoon. In conjunction with this event, we are also hosting breakfast and lunch with Santa. Breakfast will be served from 9:30 until 11 a.m., and lunch will be served from 11:30 to 1 p.m. Cost is $8 per child and $4 per adult. Your fee includes your meal, picture with Santa, treat bag, an arts and crafts project. And that is all for now. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. DPW, Lloyd Curtin, and I will totally steal your thunder now since the chief already started it. We will no longer call you the interim DPW director. Lloyd is now officially the director of DPW in Ferndale. He applied for and was successful in the candidate recruitment process. And so, Lloyd, you're not a stranger, but we are very excited to have you permanently on board our staff.
I do appreciate the opportunity, and I will work hard to validate the trust that you've placed in me. And also, I just would like to mention, we are wrapping up leaf collection season. We have a week, 10 days. We're encouraging the residents to place their leaves at the curb. We'd like to get those picked up before snow flies so that we don't push them back into their lawns. So please feel free to get those leaves out, and we'll pick them up.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lloyd. Joe, we're talking social media, anything in that realm or any other realm?
Yeah, well, I'd like to announce that I just welcomed Lloyd to the city of Ferndale on the Ferndale's Facebook page. Welcome, Lloyd.
How many friends do we have?
We are close to 900 now.
Would love to get that to 1,000. If anyone out there is not a fan if anyone out there is not a fan of our Facebook page, please like us, because there's more than 1,000 people in this town that should be following us on Facebook. And we have a great page, thanks to Joe.
Well, to ride the social media wave, we just launched our first Foursquare account today. Foursquare is a location-based social media platform. It allows residents and visitors to Ferndale to check into city parks, city locations, and events such as the Dream Cruise. And when they check in, they can share what they're doing, their thoughts on the event, how they're doing, and more importantly, for our parks, how they can use our parks, what our parks might need. They can share those insights with us, and we're able to collect that and use it as real-time data. You can visit our website to follow us on Foursquare, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Tumblr.
I don't think April's going to have anything to say.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate all the hard work that you've done on that. Councilman Lennon, you have all those accounts too, don't you?
Yes, I do.
I think I follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm always tweeting.
City Clerk, anything from the clerk's office this evening?
Well, I would just like to remind folks, if they do have issues or complaints about the election, we do have Sherilyn is a task force starting on December 12th. And we have a lot of involvement already, and we are definitely looking for more input. So please let us know if there's anything that you would like us to work on for the next big election. Thank you.
And what's the best way for them to reach you?
Well, you can call the clerk's office, of course, or send us an email. We have a general email account, cityclerksoffice@ferndale-mi.com, and we would love to hear from people.
Thanks, Marnie. Appreciate it. And thanks for filling in again tonight. City Manager April Lynch, anything from your office this evening?
Well, I don't have as much fun stuff to talk about, but I do want to offer a friendly reminder about the holiday schedule as it relates to the city council meetings for the month of December. That we will be having both meetings on December 17th. At 7 p.m. we'll have our audit presentation, and then at 7:30 we'll move into our regular meeting. And again, that will be the only meeting for the month of December due to the holidays. And so for people who are interested in attending, please note that in your calendars. I do want to talk a little bit about just kind of where we are with the multi-space meter project. I know we had talked about originally trying to get that done by Thanksgiving, and that was very aggressive. That will not take place. We're looking at shooting for toward the end of January for the multi-space meters, and there'll be more information coming as we know more about the actual schedule. It's just, that was a very large project to try to do in a short amount of time, but it is happening, but more toward probably the end of January. So again, as the schedule becomes more concrete, we will let council know, as well as the general public and business owners as well. So those are all I have today. And welcome to Lloyd. We're very excited to have him as part of our team.
Thanks. Dan Christ, anything from the
Just one item, Your Honor. In following up County Commissioner Covey's inquiry regarding the Environmental Sustainability Commission, that ordinance does provide that it sunsets of its own accord on December 31st of this year. So I am certainly happy to prepare a proposed amendment for consideration by council on the 17th, which would extend the term of that ordinance.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate that. Councilman Martin.
The only thing I have is this Sunday, December 2nd, is the Fern Care Bowl-a-thon. You can come raise money for Fern Care. Registration starts at noon. They have teams of up to 4 people. Bowling starts at 1 o'clock. And all proceeds, 100%, go to Fern Care Free Clinic. So great cause, get some exercise, do some bowling. There are prizes for high team score and an individual high score. And I believe there's some recognition for low score based on history. But this is a great event. Come on out and bowl.
Very good. Thank you. Councilman Lennon.
I'm finishing this tweet. I'll be done. There we go.
Yeah, right.
I have nothing. Shop locally, please.
Amen. Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Piana.
I challenged Dan to beat my high score of 125 from the Ferndale Bowl-a-thon from last year. Yes, I was going to say come out and raise some money for Fern Care. What I really wanted to talk about was the first neighborhood meeting that was held on November 15th in partnership with the school district to talk to the neighbors of the Dales, who came for 2 hours to voice their concerns about some of the recent occurrences that were happening about the school, but also learn about some opportunities where we can make some connections. And I think that's what the conversation is going to be about going forward. There is another neighborhood meeting scheduled for Wednesday, December 5th from 6:30 to 8, and graciously hosted by the Digital Learning Center, also known as TAFT. And I encourage residents in my neighborhood to come out and help propel the conversation forward. And there is really significant interest to create a neighborhood group, so we're figuring out how to launch that as well. So if there's other residents throughout the city who are interested in perhaps organizing their neighborhood or considering how do I get a block group going or how do I get a neighborhood group going, you can contact me at melaniecpiana@gmail.com, and we can figure out how to get it going. Thanks.
Councilman Galloway.
Thank you, Mayor. This is actually my second city council meeting today. This morning, our liquor license review committee reviewed an application for a redevelopment liquor license to open within the city's CBD. It's an exciting project. We're looking forward to presenting it to the full council. It's probably going to be considered December 17th. In that process, though, we grew concerned that perhaps the current criteria and factors set forth for the inter-county license transfer may need to be updated or reviewed again and decide whether it's really meeting the needs that the city has now. We're particularly concerned with whether there should be any zoning regulations or special land use requirements for certain establishments like dance clubs or nightclubs within the CBD. So as a result of that discussion this morning, I'd like to have the city manager and staff look into that a little bit and perhaps bring a recommendation to council for referral to the Plan Commission or for further action. Other than that, I'd echo Councilman Lennon's suggestion that you do shopping in Ferndale where you can.
Thank you, Councilman. And Dan, you're aware of that?
I am, Your Honor.
Awesome, thank you. You've said it all. I have no other announcements. So with that, meeting is adjourned.